So this one's not going to be a proper head-to-head of these three conferences. These are just the three conferences that didn't make the final cut to the actual bracket segment of the whole thing. And with it now being down to the final four, I thought first we would take a look at the Sun Belt, the Mid-American Conference, and the FBS Independents, and basically show you why they didn't have teams. Obviously, one thing is you need to have a number that is divisible by 2 multiple times. So with 8, we were able to go down to 4, then to the final 2. If we would have had these other 2 in, we would have been at 10, then you're at 5, and then you can't obviously have all of them play each other. Now, if these 3 teams would have all been able to field full teams, that would have dealt with that in another way. Obviously, you can just have a bye seeding for someone, and that was actually the original plan. But once you get to building these teams, you see that they're not going to beat anybody head to head. Even the smaller conferences that could field full teams already struggled a little bit. But let's just get into the teams here and take a look. So we take a look at the Sun Belt, and we see here this is pretty much the worst of all the conferences, putting together an offense here of a left tackle, a good center in Daniel Kilgore, and then Derek Newton at the right side as well, Ladarius Green at tight end. But then the wide receivers, Albert Wilson, Brian Quick, Jerick McKinnon, the running back. No quarterback, but they do have Mike Tolbert at fullback, so they would probably win a fullback competition against a couple of conferences. We move on to their defense. Again, there's a few players, and this is also why I thought it was worth showing, because even these conferences, when we see 2 at the bottom there, Mario Addison and Josh Norman, 2 guys obviously worth mentioning. Demario Davis as well. You got JJ Wilcox, and that is pretty much it for the Sun Belt. They've got some players of note, but they can't put together a team that's even worth pitting against any other team, really. So then we take a look at the Mid-American Conference, where there are some better players. The offensive line already looking quite good. Joe Staley, Eric Fisher on the left side. Center's pretty good with Greg Manch. Josh Klein, obviously actually more of a right guard, but still a center here for us to use. And then the right guard position, very strong. TJ Lang, Brandon Brooks, Brian Winters. Tight end position, Antonio Gates out of Kent State, as well as Julian Edelman at the same school. Antonio Brown out of Central Michigan. You got Ben Roethlisberger out of Miami. Thomas Rawls, Willie Snead. Actually not bad. This could probably, in a certain, the wide receivers could probably beat quite a few of the smaller conferences. The offensive line isn't complete, but still has players you could use in other positions. Tight end's also pretty strong. Quarterback, but as strong as the offense is, and that's still not complete, we move on to the defense, and it's strong again. It's a lot of, basically based on where the conference is, I would assume, but a lot of Steelers players here. You get Mike Mitchell at free safety, James Harrison, Jatavis Brown at middle linebacker, Khalil Mack, of course, out of Buffalo, Jaleel Adai and Barry Church, the strong safeties. In their cornerback position, Jimmy Ward, Quinton Rollins, TJ Carey, but then pretty much no defensive linemen. So basically, the reason I missed these out is offense, I would have, just a right tackle. I think we had one team with just a missing right tackle. Problem is, they've got an entire position group missing with the defensive line, especially with, Defensive Player of the Year, Khalil Mack. It's players here that are worth mentioning and looking at, but it's just not complete enough. And then there was the story with the FBS Independents, where of course I put BYU players into the Mountain West Conference because, that's no longer their non-football conference, but they're in a non-football conference, obviously for everything but football. But until 2011, they were in the Mountain West Conference. Notre Dame I put in the ACC because that is their non-football conference. And those 2 teams basically, obviously you've got Army as well, and you've got University of Massachusetts at Amherst, but pretty much it's just Notre Dame and BYU that fill up this team, and it's not a bad team. Again, you've got an offensive line with some good players like Zach Martin. You've got tight ends, of course. These are also in no specific order. Well, actually, as you can see, Dennis Pitter out of BYU, then Tyler Eifert, Kyle Rudolph. It's more in alphabetical order of the college names. Wide receivers, Golden Tate, Will Fuller. Running back, CJ Prosise, Theo Riddick. Again, no quarterback. Obviously, we could technically put Deshaun Kaiser in there now as a quarterback, but we're not including any drafted players anyway. Defense, again, obviously quite strong. You got guys like Harrison Smith, Daniel Sorensen, but again, actually not overly strong. Ezekiel Lanza, obviously helping out the case, as well as Stephon Tuitt. But again, it's not a complete team. You don't have all the cornerbacks, but it doesn't mean these conferences weren't worth looking at. So I wanted to look at these before we move on to the Final Four. So now we've looked at all the Division I FBS teams, so we can move on to the Final Four, knowing that those Final Four are the 4 best teams, having seen these other 3 now. And that is what it's just going to be for this video. Just wanted to show these 3 teams, explain why they went in, explain why when we look at the ACC again, why Notre Dame players are going to be in there. And my thinking behind that is, 1, they were already going to win their first matchup against Mountain West anyway. It's the ACC. And then I also figured it probably wouldn't massively affect their second tie one way or the other. Which way that is, that's to be seen. but I thought it doesn't really affect them if they get Notre Dame. Notre Dame players, of course, technically shouldn't be to the credit of the ACC, but then again, that also just depends on your standing on independent teams. And then we can see who really does produce the best NFL players out of all the conferences, according to how I look at the position groups and see who's best. But it's pretty easy when you look at them side by side. Obviously, people will disagree with certain picks and things, but I think overall it should be a pretty neutral approach to it all. And I'm interested to see who wins out of these Final Four. Not as easy anymore as it was before.